Day, even in our first
This is really interesting. I didn't know about the
So there's a
electorals.
great book by Alex Kazar called Why Do We
Next
Still
time, I'm
Have
just
the
not going to
Electoral
vote if somebody else
She
is going
brought
to vote
you
for
up,
me.
and then basically every other
That's
interview
exactly what they're
we've done
doing.
for this story, people have brought you up.
That's what I tried to do in that book.
So he wrote the book, Why Do We Still Have the Electoral College? And he's also a professor of history.
And social policy at Harvard University.
But, okay,
So anyway, they couldn't agree on a method of choosing the president.
So there were some ideas on the table.
one idea was, well, we just came up with Congress.
All right, well, Congress should just elect the president.
But that's a bad idea. Then you lose separation of powers and checks and balances.
Then the president would be answerable to Congress. Like, who runs for re-election, he needs to have their favor. That's stupid. We can't do that. That's a dumb idea. Thanks very much.
So someone else in the room says, well,
What about the people? And everyone's like, no, can't do that.
Look, how is Farmer Johnson in a distant county
gonna know about some guy in Virginia running for president?
It's 1787. People didn't know anybody beyond their own neighborhood or town.
So, what they decided to do
was to take a break for a week. Fishing for the week.
What?
And they left behind a committee called, like this, it was called the Committee on Unfinished Parts.
I kind of love that.
right? Okay, so these founders, most of whom you never heard of, years later, they are still stuck there in Philadelphia.
All the cool guys are fishing.
All the cool guys are out fishing and doing other stuff, and they have to figure this out.
To get this thing done, they wanted to get it sent to the states.
So they're like, okay, how do we do this? How do we pick a president? How do we do this? And then they figured it out. They were like, okay, how about we just copy-paste Congress?
What does that mean?
Well,
How do you copy paste?
Right.
Like just plagiarize?
No, they're not going to plagiarize. They're
Okay.
just like, okay, we know everybody's already agreed on Congress, right? There's been a lot of debate, a lot of argument, but what they did to make a government that everybody agreed on, to make Congress, is they started putting thumbs on scales for different groups of people.
Thumb on a scale. Go over it.
Okay, so one of the thumbs is they make the Senate. And they say every state, doesn't matter if you're big or small, you get 2 senators. And so that's a little thumb on the scale for the small states that don't have a lot of people, so that they aren't completely overrun by the big states.
Okay.
The other thumb is for the South. They say, okay, you can count an enslaved person in your state as 3/5 of a person. That way you boost the population of your state and you get more representatives in the House. That was another thumb. To give more power to the South so they weren't overrun by the North.
You can imagine them sitting there, okay, so how do we choose a president? Well, the big states have more influence than small states, and what about slaves? And then we're going to reopen that whole thing? No, we're going to import the whole thing. So what the Electoral College is in some respects a replica of Congress. If you think about it, each state has electors equal to the number of representatives plus the number of senators, okay? And then the electors would convene in their state capital and cast their electoral votes.
So the committee's like, bingo, job done.
Dude, that sort of seems smart to me.
It is, but under the circumstances, very clever solution.
Yeah.
So that all is stuff they put in the Constitution, right? So it's like there's this body of electors that vote for the president. Each state has a certain number of electors based on how many representatives they have in Congress. All of that is in the Constitution. What is not in the Constitution is how to convert the people's votes in the state into electoral votes. Do you do it proportionally?
Where if you get 53% of the state's vote,
You get 53% of the electoral.
right.
You could do it by district. Each district in the state gets an electoral.
So that's how you lose.
But ultimately, the founders are like, we're going to let the states decide.
52%.
That's like
Just
an
huge
important part of this country is that the states
That is an
are
important part of
making
this
big
country, yeah.
decisions. So
True. But
They let the
that
states
might
decide.
be the biggest mistake they made
I can't hear
in this
you.
whole process.
So they let the states
And
decide.
Alex says there is this pivotal moment pretty early on where the system we now have starts to really take shape
In the 1800 election,
between these two sort of juggernauts in the history of this country, Adams and Jefferson.
now they have also run against each other in 1796.
And in that election, which Adams won,
Adams had gotten an electoral vote from the state of Virginia, Jefferson State.
because Virginia was doing district voting. Adams had won a district, so we got a vote.
But in 1800, the Virginia legislature didn't want that to happen saw a close election coming.
And so, the Virginia politicians got together and passed a state law that said, okay, we're done with this district system. From now on, the way our electors will vote will be
Winner take all.
if you win the majority of the votes in this state, all of our electors will cast their votes for you. And the Virginian politicians, they did this because they knew Jefferson was going to win a majority of votes in their state, and this way he wouldn't leave any on the table.
It's a little dirty.
A little dirty.
I don't know, something's a little smelly.
Yeah, the candy's gone smelly. Because what they're doing is erasing all of the votes of the people who voted for Adams.
Yeah, no, exactly. And what's interesting when you look into the
They walk right
documents
across
of
the
it
front of you
is
like
they
that.
passed that law and then they attached to it a kind of apology for doing it.
Effectively saying,
We know this isn't really good or fair.
we know it would be better for the country if we did not do this. But we're doing it anyway.
So if the Virginia did this, shockingly, Massachusetts, John Adams' state, retaliated and did a version of the same thing.
And Alex says, after that, the states,
They're off to the races.
another state does it, then another state does it, and this is basically what the system is now. And what that system leads to is the feeling that your vote just doesn't actually matter. Because, like, if you vote for someone for president and then 50% plus one people in your state vote for someone else, your vote doesn't get counted. Like, it for president, it means it
Thrown out.
it's effectively thrown out. And that is essentially happening to tens of millions of votes every presidential election.
Right. Are you gonna make us feel better about voting by the end of this? Or
I think so. I think so.
It is with pleasure that I introduce
I'll have to
Senator
vote
Birch
again.
Bottom.
Because I kind of think of Birch.
What's that?
And,
I don't
and
think
what
I've
he was
ever
trying to
voted
do as a sort of beacon of hope.
I vote if you have electoral units to change your vote.
Faculty and student body of UCLA, it's a privilege to
Yeah.
have a chance to be
It's
here
kind
with you
of
this
cheesy.
afternoon and to share
They
some
just
of
took
my
your
thoughts.
voting rights
So
away.
Birch started holding those hearings in the mid-60s.
Yeah, that's how they do
Electors,
things.
He's having all these different
What
experts
have I
come in
done,
and
man?
testify.
Well, this is talking about history,
the
though,
history
too,
of the
right
electoral
now.
college, the fact that it wipes away all these people's votes, all different kinds of things. But one of the things that these experts hit on over and over is that the system is actually fundamentally dangerous.
You may say, well, why is it
Dangerous.
dangerous?
It's
Basically,
just,
it's
like-
dangerous. The most dangerous aspect of it is the fact that the present system, the elected system, does not guarantee that the man who wins is the man that has the most votes.
And Alex says that's because when you have this winner-take-all system,
It transforms the contest into a contest among states. Because once you have winner take all, then winning the state really matters.
winning as many people as you can doesn't.
And because of this, the political leaders of both of our major parties know
You can lose the popular vote in the election
it doesn't make any difference if you're soundly defeated.
so long as you win the right states.
You're going to have enough
What?
electoral votes to be elected president of the United States.
It's wherever
This
you want to
almost
go, I
just
don't care.
happened.
In 1960, 1960
You can go
was
there
one
if
of
you want.
those very close elections where
I don't care
if
where you
like
go.
I think it was like 20 or 30,000 votes had gone differently in a few states,
The loser of the popular vote.
would have won
I know.
because of the electoral college.
And this is the thing that all the experts were saying was dangerous, which was the very thing that terrified Birch.
Because I mean, we think of the United States as in a particularly fragile moment historically right now, but that was also the case in the 1960s.
So remember, in 63,
3 shots were fired.
President Kennedy gets shot and killed.
It's the height of the Cold War. There's continued racial unrest and police brutality. By 68,
It's the peak of the war in Vietnam.
The whole world is watching. Chance to cry on the side.
There's a protest at the Democratic National Convention.
violence on the streets.
Dr. Martin Luther King,
MLK Jr. is assassinated.
shot to death in
Robert Kennedy.
Senator Kennedy has been shot. Is that possible? Is that possible?
So Birch, he's watching all of this unfold.
And he's just really worried.
When we have an electoral college system,
That if we have a system that can take the loser and make them a winner,
we tend to erode the confidence in the people of this country and their president and in their
So that's
form
why
of
they
government.
shot
That
and
is just
assassinated those
huge
people to get that
concern.
going.
That at some point in the future,
And nobody
Americans will
figured out what they were
refuse
doing.
to recognize the legitimacy of a president.
and so once he came out of these conversations, learning what he did
I've heard of
about
it,
the
I didn't know
Electoral
what it was.
College,
Says, you know what we need to do? We need to get rid of it. We don't need to tinker with it. We need to get rid of it.
Yes, it should be one person, one vote.
The direct popular election.